The two of you, you've got 4 Muslim students here, and you just got to find out as much, whatever. We can go in 100 different directions, but I want you just to find out as much as you can about them, about Islam, about what it means, everything.
How does your faith impact your daily life?
Oh, that's a nice question.
In the choices I make, the vices I have, and I feel like the way you treat your parents, respect your family, that's also a huge thing. I feel like because they're the people that teach these values to you when you grow up, and you sort of have to reciprocate that when you grow up as well. When you text them, when you call them, and stuff like that. That's just a small example.
That sounds like an answer you get from one of your Christian friends, by the way. Just take note of that, my friend.
I would say pretty much the same thing. I think everything that I do, everything that I think, not everything that I think, but a lot of the actions that I take is influenced by my beliefs. And obviously, if my beliefs are so integrated with Islam, then a lot of the things that I'm doing, I always think about my religion first, and if that's aligning with my morals before I do that action.
What are some examples of displaying your faith in everyday life, and how has it impacted you as a person, and what your core values are?
Oh, dude, that's brilliant.
So one of the things that I can think of is also related to my parents. I honestly rarely lie to my parents, really, because in Islam it's a very big thing to respect your mother and your father, and it's when I have to say something to them and it's I have to lie about it, I feel really awful doing that. So I have to think about, okay, who am I as a person first, and why am I saying these things? And then I hardly, I hardly ever do things where I would have to lie in the first place, but I think that's a big thing that's influenced the relationship I have with my parents, is what I believe and how I treat them as well.
I think that's really critical is self-control. Control is a huge thing because that's tied to all the bad things you do, the good things you do, the way you treat your parents. How if they make a dumb point, you're not supposed to lash out at them. That's just one example. That's control. There's so many things when it comes to drinking or going out, or things that they tell me not to do that are also against my religion. I also have to think of how to control that.
You brought up the how it influences choices, good and bad decisions that you make. What are some examples that you can say?
All right. I feel like this is the most apparent one since we're in Penn State of all places, but I choose not to drink. I choose not to go out on Friday, Saturday nights. That's why I'm in class. And I choose to dress in a certain way. I choose to speak in a certain way. I don't know, because I feel like I'm in a case where I grew up in Islam, meaning I'm born surrounded by a Muslim community, Muslim parents. So kind of the choices that kind of shaped me, I grew up with them. So in a sense that coming here, obviously it's different. I see everyone do their own different thing that's different from how I grew up. Hence, I like to say it's just that. You just continue to do what you believe in. Just honestly, just follow what I believe in. And that's my best example.
I would agree with everybody said in kind of how it impacts everything I do, because we're taught that Islam is a way of life, and within the religion it kind of tells you how you should be and how you should act. So morally, I would say that's where it aligns, and that determines how I might go about certain situations or things like that, even with interacting with other people. If somebody does something wrong to me, my first instinct is not to do something back to them. It's kind of just turn the other cheek or things like that.
You said it influences the way that you speak. What are some examples in that? When you said it influences how you speak, communicate, and things of that nature.
All right. So this has gotten a bit worse since I came here, but growing up, I didn't really swear. And there's also a thing where you're really promoted to say good words. I can't remember the specific Quran verse, but it's basically trying to say that you're supposed to call people nice things. You're supposed to talk to people well without insulting them. And also, I think it's also like linguistically, I'm from Malaysia. We speak Malay and English. However, I can speak some Arabic phrases, so like Alhamdulillah, Astaghfirullah, Bismillah. So it also changes a certain way how I speak that I probably wouldn't be able to speak in that way if it weren't for me being a Muslim.
Like, what was your experience with growing up around religion? Because I've heard a lot of stories about people like becoming Muslim and finding Islam, but like if you like grew up with it, like how do you think it's different than like either of us were raised, or like what were some like really like important factors and like things?
You asked, how is how you were raised different than how we were raised? Because you got 4 Muslims here, man. Like, here we go. 4 Muslims. You get to ask them anything. This is like ask a Muslim class. So it's like, what makes you different from the average Christian and the average Jew? Okay.
I personally believe that even if you're like raised in a Muslim family, like you still yourself have to find Islam in a way. For me personally, like I grew up in Bangladesh like the first half of my childhood, so obviously everyone around me was Muslim. And then there was like a very big shift in my life when I was just like in first grade, because like the people I was surrounded by, like completely different. I accidentally also was enrolled in a Sunday school, like for Christians, when I was like 7, because...
Awesome. Well, dude, you were in Alabama. That's just mandatory. As soon as you enter the state, you get stopped at the state line and they enroll you in a Sunday school.
Yeah, one of my mom's friends told her, like, oh, your daughter should, like, join this thing. I don't think she knew, also, by the way. But, like, I ended up going to a Sunday school when I was, like, 7, and I was, like, super confused about everything. Because obviously...
Wait, did they tell you who Jesus was?
Yes. Okay, I was learning in school that Jesus was, like, God, but then at home, he's my prophet, And it's, like, obviously that takes a toll on a 7-year-old child's mind, because now it's, like, how am I supposed to figure out who he is to me? And so I guess like when I was like growing up, like after that, I stopped going to Sunday school when I was 8, by the way. This was like only a year thing, but after that, when COVID hit, I think that's when I really found Islam on my own, because we were all in lockdown and there wasn't anyone telling me what I should believe. And my family as well, they're not very, they don't force me to like believe in anything. They tell me like what their morals are, and they teach me like the way like that we live, but it's like ultimately up to me like to choose like if I want to live in this way or if I want to believe in these things or what, And so in quarantine, I think I was like 13 or 14 at the time, I would just like research a lot, and I would like read the Quran a lot, which is our holy book, and I would also like, my best friend is Christian, and then my other best friend is Jewish, and then my other best friend is Muslim. I have 3. So I would like ask them a lot, and like they were also like very, like they would teach me a lot about their religions as well. And it was very interesting to me, but I ultimately chose Islam for myself because my parents didn't tell me like, oh, you should be praying, you should be covering, you should be doing this. Like they didn't tell me that at all. They told me, they just like modeled, I guess in a way. But to me, like that's something that I chose for myself. So I think for me, I grew up choosing it for myself, even though it was a part of my life to begin with.
I would agree, you do. I think everybody has to find religion at the end of the day, no matter what you're raised with. But my experience is a bit different because my parents were more strict, I would say, and more religious. But I would say growing up in America, being Muslim, I think going back to your question, it differs a bit because I don't think it's necessarily catered to in school and stuff. Like, where I grew up, there was a lot of Catholic schools, but like for us, if we wanted to learn about religion, we had to like have our own schools on the weekend that we would go to. And then we would get off for a lot of Jewish or Christian holidays, but when it came to Muslims, we didn't get off. And a lot of times, even if we were absent for our holidays, it still wasn't excused because they didn't count it that way. So I think it was a bit of a struggle when you're not really surrounded by a lot more Muslims, and it seems like everybody else can relate to, having a similar religion, I would say.
I have like a small follow-up for you. Do you think that like your parents being stricter or like more religious when you were growing up influenced your decision to like wear a hijab and be a hijabi?
I think there's definitely like a scale of strictness, and I wouldn't say they're all the way to the extreme or too laid back. I would say they're sort of in the middle of that. There was a lot of like suggestion towards it, and also because my mom covers as well, it was kind of like influential as well. But there's also still levels to it, because like the Muslim clothing, we call it an abaya. Like my mom will wear that everywhere, but like I don't wear that everywhere. So I think there's levels to covering as well.
I want to go back to that question that you asked, what makes them different? Because every answer they had, you guys would say the same thing. Would you not say a very similar thing to what they said about what makes them different, say, from, I don't know, from you all, right? Because I think about every Christian I know, every answer they've given, everyone has given here, the average Christian you would give the same thing probably. Have they said anything that's different from what you would say?
I mean, not really. Like, of course, beliefs are different, but other than that, like how their parents, very like strictest type household, how their religion affects the way they speak, what they choose to do and not to do, and things of that nature. I feel like that's very similar, like not drinking and stuff like that. So I'll say that's very similar.
I was raised very Reform. Like my Jewish identity, like growing up, like was more like about like the cultural aspect of it and less of like the religious aspect. Like we would go to synagogue on every holiday and have Shabbat, but it was like you just did it because you know. And like I also happened to grow up in like a very Jewish area. Like all my friends were Jewish. Like most of the people in my neighborhood were the same. So it was just kind of like things we did just because like that's what everyone did, and I didn't really like realize that was like exclusively a Jewish thing. But also like my parents, like I wouldn't say like forced it on me, but that was just like what we did.
Yeah,
and like
just part of it.
Yeah. So like I had a bat mitzvah, like all of the above, but like it was never like foremost thought. It was just kind of the way like everyone did stuff.
Does that sound that you all would say like, yeah, that's kind of where we're at? Huh.
How much of your beliefs is cultural, and how much is it like religious and things of that nature? Or how do you value it?
I feel like in Indonesia, I think the religion is part of the culture, which makes it so easy. It's like a lifestyle. Like if I didn't go to Friday prayers with my friends, like what are you doing if you're not going for prayers? Like what are you doing if you're not fasting? Why are you eating pork? Like most of my friends were not even Muslim, but they would always make sure, to keep me in my like if I accidentally had they made sure beforehand. Like, is that pork? You make sure beforehand. And I think that was really good because they always kept me in check. And over here, I feel like I relate to them in a way because you don't have that. You don't have teachers or friends telling you about Friday prayers or fasting. You have to remember that by yourself. And there, it felt like cool, that we're doing Ramadan, that we're fasting, that we're like celebrating Eid. Like that was really fun. Whereas here is like you don't have your family as well, but everybody is just so different over here, or so unlike how you are as a person. So I feel like it's more difficult here.
I have had a slightly different experience because I feel like Bangladesh is like slightly more secular than maybe Malaysia, Indonesia, Sudan might be. So like growing up, I have seen like friends that are also Bengali, like maybe they're not practicing as much, or I also have friends that are practicing like a lot, like they like wear hijab and they, they're doing all these things, and it's very interesting because it kind of ties back to what I said earlier of like needing to find Islam for yourself. Like me personally, I'm trying to get better with my religion every single day, and I'm trying to learn more every single day. But it's not really something that like was like drilled into me, like really. It's more of like me finding that for myself. Even within my own family, like I have a lot of cousins, and I have a lot of cousins that pray a lot, and they encourage me to pray a lot, and it's like very helpful for me. But then I also have like cousins that aren't practicing as much. So to me, it's like really like seeing like how well I can practice it on my own, and how I can find like religions like for myself too.
What do you strive to achieve in your religion? Like I know like for Christians, of course, it's to be like Christ and things of that nature. Like what do you like strive to like look forward to? I'm trying to think about how
Hey,
the best way to
let me ask you, first off, hold the mic a little closer. What do you, when you say try to strive to be like Christ, I'm asking this for you because you don't know. Help Anna out here, right? What do you mean by that?
So in the Christian faith, it's common to be like Christ. Of course, we never be like him because, we won't never be him because he's perfect. But to strive to be like him was how he was like slow to anger and showing traits that align with Christian, like for example, like the fruits of the Spirit and things of that nature. I would say like long suffering and stuff like that. So I know for us is to strive to be like that, to of course spend eternity with him. Like what does that look like for you all?
I thought your explanation was really, I guess, it was interesting to say, because how you said like to strive to be like Christ, that's pretty much how I'm not representing everyone, but I was taught to like, we want to strive to be like the Prophet Muhammad. So in a sense that, you said a specific example that I can't remember off the top of my head, but to speak kindly, to treat people fairly, to uphold justice even in the worst causes, in the worst times. And I feel like it was really interesting to see that similarity. But yeah, in addition to that would be, in order to get to heaven or hell, or basically we strive to get God, Allah's love, rahmah.
Wait, to do what?
In order to like, to be peaceful in the afterlife, to have a good life in here as well, in the world as well, we want to strive for God's rahmah. So like his blessing, his love. So that's why we do these good things. That's why we follow what he says. And I'm using he because English. There's no better gender pronoun for that.
What would you say in Malay?
Well, in Malay, we don't have gendered third-person pronouns. It's just dia. Or in this case, in Allah's case, we use baginda, which is for like royalty in a sense. So like just to show that positioning.
So like in Christianity, Christians, right? Like, you have your Southern Baptist Christians in Alabama. You have your Russian Orthodox Christians, your Greek Orthodox Christians. You have Christians in Korea who can be really hardcore. You got Christians in China that can be, and nobody expects Christians to be the same because they're all different in different ways, different cultures. So now you got four Muslims, right? How are you different? Like, you got to be different in the way you worship or the way something, because Southern Baptists aren't the same as Roman Catholics in Italy, man. That's a different world. They're all Christians, presume they're all going to get saved. They're all going to heaven.
I would say like in the way we dress, or like even in the way we tie our scarves, sometimes you can point out where somebody's from just based off of how they tie their scarf or the material of like the garb that they're wearing.
But hold the mic close, by the way. But as Muslims, you don't see yourselves as different?
No.
Bro, hang on a second. Hold on. Have you ever met anyone who's Russian Orthodox or Greek Orthodox, or how about Catholic? You're Protestant, right?
I don't really have like the denomination.
You're just Christian.
Yeah.
Dude. Okay. When you meet someone who's Catholic, the Pope enters into the picture. Mm. Are they the exact same as you as a Christian, or?
I feel like it's very different. Like about a month ago, I went to a Catholic church. Like they have one like Pascarilla.
Yeah.
And I went to the service, and it's completely different than.
But do you feel like their connection to God is the same as your connection to God?
I don't know if I could necessarily judge that. It feels a lot more like cut. Like for example, during the service, it was like everybody stood up at the same time, sat down at the same time, kneeled, and then for me, I'm just from like.
But their relationship with Christ, is that? All right. Let me. Okay, so you say you're Reformed Jewish, right? How about think about some of the like hard, like ultra Orthodox. It's like a different religion.
It's extremely different.
You're all
like
Jews.
It's like very much a spectrum instead of like different like groups. So it's like very like it's just insanely different.
Okay, so it would
like
be
even in like faith wise.
Okay, yeah, exactly. The difference between you and someone who's Hasidic or ultra Orthodox is the difference between Tasnim here and me. You're all Jews, but
like is it?
Oh, I don't know.
Like,
it seems
do
like
you
it.
practice Islam?
No, but well, yeah, I converted
Because
actually.
There is like still some connection between like Judaism, like Reformed Judaism, and extreme Orthodox, but it's like very few similarities. Very, very few similarities.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. That's like. By the way.
But there are still similarities.
No, there are some similarities, but there's so many. What I'm hearing here is there are so many similarities between them and the two of you. So it's like.
I noticed like a contrast and like some shades of like piety, if you will, where it's like some people are like more devout in the faith and then some people are like less devout in the faith. So I was wondering like what attitudes are there like within the religion and within the culture as far as like devoutness, if you will, and how do they affect you personally by either encouraging you in your faith or inhibiting you?
Oh man, like Anna here, the like Orthodox Jews. Look at you right here. You're wearing shorts. Oh my God, you would be kicked out in a second, right? That's not very devout. So how is that? Yeah, how is that? The devoutness. How do you guys measure that? How do you measure that? Do you feel your family's less strict? How is that for you? When you compare yourself to Tesnim.
Okay, so you said that you like your mom like wears the hijab, for example, right? Is that true? Like for me, again, like it's like I've been always encouraged to like find Islam on my own. Like my mom as well, like she started wearing the hijab like I think officially 2 years ago, and she's very like integrated with faith now, but it's not like something that has always been like always been a thing, like she's also done that on her own, and now she's taking like Quran lessons like on her own because she wants to like understand Arabic better.
Oh, that's cool.
And she's like, and that all started like pretty much like a year or two ago.
Most of them mentioned that they found Islam and it wasn't like because they're family, but when we look at the numbers, most people stay in their religion, and even if they weren't raised religious, they tend to be in the religion that their parents is. So I was wondering if you guys actually think you were open to looking into other religions or actually converting to like Christianity. Like Christians say they found Jesus, Muslims say I found Islam. I'm actually curious if you think you could have been in a different religion.
As a Muslim, and I feel like a lot of other Muslims can relate to this too, but when we're growing up, we learn about other religions as well. Like it's not just us learning about Islam, especially because there's so many connections, and we obviously, like Christianity and Judaism came before us, so I think we have to learn about them in order to come to the conclusion of our religion. So I think just knowing the information, and as a religion, I feel like we're open to like seeking knowledge about it. Like you're encouraged to read the Bible and like other religious books so that you can also make that decision by yourself. It's not like a hard, like you just learn about Islam and that's it.
Okay.
From like a outside perspective, it looks like you mentioned a bunch of similarities and like it all seems so similar. What's like the actual like root difference? Like where does the difference come from between all three?
Dude, that's such a brilliant question. That's that's the simple question, because you're all the same. You're all children of Abraham, whatever. Yeah.
Our religious practices and how deep we are into practicing our religion.
To your particular practice.
Yeah, how far are we going?
Yeah, I got you. That's all there is, dude. But the beliefs are the same.
Yeah. Could I add something?
Yeah.
I've heard like Abraham, like one of the prophets that you mentioned,
Yeah.
he had like 2 sons, and Muhammad is a descendant of the firstborn son Ishmael, and then Christianity, Jesus came from Isaac, his second-born son, with Abraham's wife Sarah, and so like that descendant created 2 different.
All
they're
right.
all very similar.
Okay, so that would be one.
That's what I've heard, but I was
Yeah, all
asking.
right. No, you're basically got it.